Hi, I'm Diane with Operation Hope, the global leader in providing financial dignity for youth, adults, and families. We're teaming up with Coca-Cola to help women and girls take charge of their finances. From managing the money you have to starting your own business, we've got you covered. So, how can you make more of the money you're making? Jessica Washington, our Youth Empowerment Manager in Atlanta, is going to show you how, starting with the basics of budgeting.
So when do you think it's a good time to create your budget? When you've gotten some money and then you get to figure out how to spend it? Or do you think it might be a more dignified way if you plan how you're going to spend your money before you get it? Let's go with option number 2. We definitely want to have a plan of what we want to do with our money. So we're looking at a couple different concepts here. Number 1 is understanding the difference between our needs and our wants. Also, the difference between an income and our expenses, and then the fundamentals of just creating a simple budget and how to do that. So first of all, let's talk about understanding needs versus wants. So we've got basic needs, things like shelter, where we're going to eat. We also have our housing, where we're going to live. And then we have basic things like transportation. How are we going to get around? There are other things that we're going to include in our budget that we'll kind of talk about in a few minutes. But for now, I need you to think about just your basic needs. So you need a place to live. You don't need a mansion. That would be something that's a want, something that you desire for in the future or as you get more money. You may need a cell phone. Nowadays, everybody does. But you don't need the iPhone 6. That would be a want. You need a way to get around. You need some basic transportation. You don't need a brand new car. That would be a want. So once you get that basic understanding of your basic needs versus the things that you want, you can start to create goals. And then in your budget, you can start to incorporate savings and eventually get those things that you want. The first thing that we can do with our budget is we can tackle our needs first. And we may even adjust our needs as we go to create more wiggle room in our budget. Awesome. The next thing we got to talk about and mention is our income versus expenses. So income is the money that we're actually bringing in, perhaps through a job or perhaps through our savings or maybe even birthday money or perhaps because of our good grades, we're able to bring money in. This is the money that we're going to use for our budget. Our expenses are all the money that's going out. So unfortunately, that's the money that you're spending. So you've earned some income and now you're going to use expenses as a way to get rid of that money. And if you're anything like me, you work really hard to bring in that money. So you want to work just as hard on making sure that you're only giving out as much as you need to so that we're saving as much as possible. And last thing is creating a budget. Now we're going to talk about budget. We're going to go through a sample budget on how you can kind of get started. This picture right here is one of my favorites. This is how I was taught to budget my money when I was younger. And at your age, it's a great way to get started. Once you come up with a goal, basically how you're going to come up with your money, your basic income, you can start to think about different ways that you'd like to spend your money. So that when you're younger and maybe you don't have a bank account just yet, you can start with the envelope system. And then even as you get older and you do have a bank account, banks will even allow you to create a simple system similar to this, where you can actually save portions of your money to determine and go towards your goals. So perhaps you've got some clothing that you'd like to spend some money on. Maybe you need a new outfit. Or perhaps you'd like to spend money with your friends and go to the movies or go to the amusement parks. Perhaps a portion of your money, which should be your savings, a portion of no matter what you get will go into your savings. And then lastly, you may have some additional expenses. Maybe you're responsible for paying a bill or two already. In that case, you would take whatever money you receive, your income, whether it be gift or from employment, and then you would distribute that money however you see accordingly. Right now, you might be juggling with maybe $5 a week because maybe you're only getting a simple allowance. But as you get older and you get more skills, you may start babysitting, taking out the trash for your neighbors, perhaps cutting the grass, lots of ways to earn small income. And as you get older, the more experience you get and the more education you get, you'll be able to earn more and more income. So what I've done is I've created a very simple budget for us to kind of go through and give you an idea of what budgeting is going to look like in the real world. So as you're just starting out, when you get a little bit older, you should be earning probably around $2,000 a month. So we'll just go with that for this example. $2,000 a month is awesome. It sounds like a lot of money, but as we'll see, it goes very quickly. Of course, we always want to pay ourselves first. So perhaps our first budget would say that we were going to estimate about $200 a month would go just back to ourselves in our own savings accounts. Now, our housing will probably cost about $900 a month, a regular apartment or maybe a small mortgage. Our transportation costs, if we had a car perhaps, would cost about $450. Once you include your gas, you also have car insurance and your car note. We also have our groceries. So that's just going to the grocery store, not dining out. Probably on average is going to cost us about $400 a month. Then we've got our grooming, our personal care. So perhaps getting our hair done and our nails, whatever kind of upkeep that we need to look our best. Entertainment. Everybody's got to have some budget room for some entertainment. Work all day, you've got to have some relaxation time as well. So on average, this sounds like a pretty good budget. Only problem is, if you total it down at the end, we're at $2,350. We're well over our budget. We're only bringing in $2,000 a month. So this is where you would make a few adjustments in your budget. This is what we'd be looking at. So here's some new updated figures that I created. And basically what we need to do is determine from these items, which of these things are a need or a want. So our savings is definitely a need. And for that reason, I chose to keep my budget as $200 no matter what. It's just not worth cutting into my savings to stay on budget. Now my housing, that's something that you may be able to fluctuate. There's lots of different options when you're looking at housing. The neighborhood you live in, perhaps getting a roommate, going from a large 2 and 3 bedroom apartment to a smaller 1 bedroom if you're by yourself. So for that reason, I was able to create an adjustment in my budget to just $750. With transportation, there's lots of different things that you can do. And sometimes with our students, we've opted to take public transportation as opposed to having a new car, because that would cut down on your gas expense, as well as your insurance, as well as that car note. So some of you may want to make a drastic cut in your budget by just getting using public transportation. But in this instance, with my example, what I did was I just decided that I wouldn't do as much driving. So perhaps I would ride my bike on the weekends or use walking or public transportation as an alternative, and that would cut down on the gas that I spend every month. My car payment, my insurance, those things won't change, but I could cut just a little bit in my budget for my transportation. With my groceries, it was simple. Just cut a little bit out. You have to eat. And a lot of times when we're creating our budget, we don't realize how much money we spend on food. But if you plan accordingly, perhaps start cutting a few coupons, you could definitely trim $50 out of your budget. Grooming. Perhaps I don't need to get my hair done and my nails done every other week. Perhaps I can cut it down and only do it once a month or every 3 weeks, which is actually really healthy. And what that does is that trims another $50 out of my budget. With entertainment, I don't always have to go to the movies, or I don't always have to go out to restaurants and things that cost money. How about if we look around the neighborhood and try to find things that are freer options? Perhaps a walk in the park. A walk in the park. I could trim $50 off of my budget if I would just opt to use entertainment, not as something that costs me money, but something that I could find for free. So just like that, I've made just a few simple trims to my budget, and look at that. I'm right on target, and I've still been able to save money and invest in myself. Now that's pretty awesome. So again, we would look at what our income is, what are the items that we have to spend money on, determine what is a want and a need, which things can we make adjustments on, and which things do we really need to stick with. Once we do that, we're able to make the adjustments that we need. Now, if my income changes, or perhaps something in my lifestyle changes where I would like to make more changes, I can always trim, or if my income increases, I can start making changes accordingly. I left investment here towards the bottom, and I left it blank because if you're not able to afford your lifestyle, your regular expenses, it's much more difficult to start investing. So what we want to do, if you have the interest of investing beyond just a regular savings account, then what you would have to do is go back to your budget and trim off what you need so that you could still have a healthy, dignified life while making those investments. I'm curious to know how many of you have a piggy bank. You know, the original pink piggy bank. Maybe it's blue, maybe it's purple, but you keep it safe in your room where you're able to make regular deposits into that piggy bank. So how many of you know exactly how much money is in that piggy bank right now? Okay, more importantly, if something were to happen at your house and you had to leave, perhaps a fire or something else may happen, and you had to leave everything behind, what would happen to that piggy bank? Would that money be with you? Does anyone know how much money is in your piggy bank? Would you ever get that money back? Well, unfortunately, if it's in a piggy bank, it's really not safe. We've got better options for you, and that is a bank. When we mention a bank, we're talking about how to keep your money safe. Whether you've earned it as a gift or perhaps through your report card or maybe even hard labor, you've worked really hard for that money. So let's keep it safe in a bank or a credit union. This is a great place. The reason being is because unlike with that piggy bank, if your money disappears or perhaps a robbery happens in the bank, anything like that could happen, even if the bank is torn down for whatever reason, the federal government insures your money up to $250,000. So when it's in the bank, that's a safer place for it. You work too hard to keep it hidden under your mattress or coins in your piggy bank. So we want to stick with a bank. Now, when we're talking about banks, we know that there's a lot of different kinds of accounts that you can have at a bank. And we really want to get the most of our experience when we're using banks or credit unions. So to start off, you can use a savings account. Now that's something that you can get as early as 9 or 10 years old. With the help of your parents, you can walk right in and get a savings account set up. And I suggest you start as early as possible. I've got 10-year-olds that deposit $3 a month. Hey, you've got to start somewhere. So no matter how much money you're working with, always make it a point to create that bank relationship as early as possible. Now, as you get older, you will get the privilege of having a checking account if you'd like. Checking accounts are great. They make it so your money is a little bit more accessible, and you can use a written check or perhaps even debit cards. I'm sure you've seen in mom and dad's wallet those debit cards. And you would think, wow, mom and dad have unlimited amounts of money on this plastic card, right? How many of you have gone to mom and dad and said, Mom and Dad, I need some money? And they say, I don't have any. And your response is, well, can you just give me your card? Unfortunately, that's not how easy it is. With a bank, you've got to go in and make regular deposits into your account, whether it be a savings account or a checking account. If you want to use those debit cards that they give you, there's got to be money in your bank account to cover your expenses. So we don't want to go and overspend, and we don't want to spend money that we don't have accessible to us in the bank. Banks and credit unions want you to be successful. If you've got financial goals, they want to help you get there. But remember, they are a business too. They are out to make money as well. So the way it works is if you don't manage your account properly, the banks can actually charge you fees. Those fees come from spending money in your account that you don't have. So perhaps you go to the store and you use your awesome debit card, but you don't quite have enough money to cover what you're going to spend your money on. Well, The bank, as a convenience, will allow you to purchase those items even if you don't have enough money in your bank account. Unfortunately, that convenience comes at a fee, a pretty hefty one at that. Did you know that banks charge upwards of $35 every time you use your bank card and you don't have enough money to cover the cost? So if you're at the grocery store spending $25, but you've only got 20 in your bank account, do you know that that bank will allow you to make that $25 transaction, but they're going to charge you up to $35 just to use your card? So whatever you just bought for $25 has actually cost you, that's right, $60. The bank is out to make money and they will charge their fees. So let's talk about another way that the banks make money. It's called interest. Yeah. So if you put money in your bank where it's nice and safe, the bank will actually use that money to loan other people money. Now you're saying, wait a minute, that's my money. They're going to let somebody else use my money? Yes. And it's a great benefit to you as well. So if the bank was to allow someone to come in and borrow $10, we're using small numbers here, they could actually charge 70 cents interest. So that means when those people came back to pay back their debt of $10, they would actually have to pay $10.70. It's easy enough. Well, the bank would keep a portion of that for themselves for interest, for that convenience of loaning the money, but they would also pay you a little interest for letting those people borrow your money. Is that awesome? So interest works both ways. The bank will charge interest when it loans money out, and it also pays interest to its customers for letting them use your money to give to other people. As you continue to grow your savings, you'll be ready to start making investments. Wouldn't it be awesome to own shares of stock or portions of a company that you love so much? So I challenge you. Instead of drinking several bottles of Coke throughout the week, how about if you invest just a little bit of your savings into owning a share of Coca-Cola for yourself? Or perhaps your favorite sneaker company? Wouldn't that be great, as opposed to just purchasing these things that you wear out or drink up, that you actually invest in that company, and as that company grows, you can actually make money. How do you make money? Well, the stock companies, the actual organizations, will pay you dividends every year, and you will make a portion of the profit that they make by selling so much of their product. It's a great way for you to continue to grow your wealth without really doing much. So continue to save in your savings account. And even as you get that checking account, establishing your relationship with that bank, as your savings increases, you'll be able to make more investments. Other investments besides just stocks and shares of company are also property. We all want to own our own home, or perhaps your next business venture. Some of you out there are looking to be entrepreneurs yourself, which would be amazing, but you've got to have capital. So start saving now so you can invest in yourself as you get older. What a great investment that would be. Before you're ready to start investing in your own business and own company, which is a huge accomplishment but takes a lot of work, I suggest that you first invest in yourself by building your credit. I'm going to tell you a little story here. Most of us have super sweet grandmas. Grandmas are awesome. They'll let you borrow $20 when you need it. And their response is usually, "How soon can you pay me back?" And you tell them, "Soon." But when that soon comes around, oftentimes we don't have the money to pay back grandma, right? But grandma's so sweet that she lets us borrow more money over and over again. Now, I'll be honest, most grandmas probably have a limit to how much they're going to let you borrow. But for the most part, your credit is good with them. However, the rest of the world is nothing like grandma. If you don't pay back your debts, no one's going to let you borrow money. And the worst part is, if you don't pay back your debt and you do find somebody to let you borrow money, you're gonna pay so much in fees. So let's figure out how to build our credit the healthiest way we can so that we'll be in the best position so that if we need to borrow money, we are not paying lots of fees to borrow that money, okay? So let's look at how our credit score is determined, and then I'll show you some ways on how you can start building your credit right now. So the creditors or banks, when they're looking to let you borrow money, they want to know, is this your first time ever borrowing money? Do they even know who you are? Now, if you've had that savings account with that bank and you have that established relationship with them, they're more comfortable allowing you to borrow money. But they're still looking to see how many other people are letting you borrow money at the same time. So is this new credit, or is this something that you possibly you've had something for quite some time? They're also looking at what kinds of credit do you have? Are you using your credit to buy a pair of shoes that really you probably should just save your money for? Or are you using this money to perhaps invest into your business or buy a house if you had enough money to pay that much back? They're looking at how are you going to use this credit. They're also looking at your payment history. Now, at a young age, you won't have a lot of payment history because you haven't had a lot of credit. And unfortunately, grandmas don't report to the credit bureau. So your credit score is not determined by how well you pay back your grandma. They're looking at things like, well, they've had their savings account for 5 years. They make regular deposits. That's a great way to show the banks just a little bit about your payment history and how well you're able to invest in yourself. That is actually something that actually determines your credit score the most. 35% of your credit score is determined by how you pay and when you pay. So do you pay on time, or are you waiting and paying people back late? They're also looking at the amount of money that you owe. Did you know that you're only supposed to use 30% of the money the bank allows you to spend? Let's do some easy math. If the bank were to give you a loan or a credit card with $1,000, that sounds like a big amount of money. However, the bank will give you $1,000, but they only want you to use $300, which would be 30% of the amount you're allowed to use. They want to know that you're responsible. They want to know that you're using dignity and that you have some self-control and you're not going to go and spend all the money that's available to you. Then with that $300, they want to know that you're going to pay that money back on time. And they want to know that you're going to spend that money over time the right way. The length of credit history. So how long have you had that particular credit card? The longer you have that credit card, the better your credit score will be. So if you're fortunate enough to get a credit card at an early age of 18, 19, 20, keep that credit card as long as you can. The longer you have that credit card, the higher your credit score will be. Even though they only look at 15% to really determine your credit score, that's a great way to build your credit. Now, a lot of you guys are thinking, I'm not even old enough to have a credit card, Miss Jessica. How do I build my credit now? So I'm talking to you middle school girls out there. You'll start by increasing your savings deposits. Again, building that relationship with your banker. And then when you're about 15, 16, with the help of your parents, you can actually qualify for a prepaid credit card. It's terrific. It's your way of showing the banks that you're willing to invest in yourself. So you pay for your credit limit up front. Usually it's a minimum of $300. But with that $300, you can't spend the whole $300. Again, you're only going to spend 30% of that. So that means even though you've given yourself a $300 limit, you know that you can only spend $100 at a time. You'll spend that $100, you'll pay it back, your credit limit will go back up to $300, and again, you will only spend 30%. And that's a really basic way of really building your credit even before you're old enough to make those big, large purchases like a home. The other important thing to do is to determine, going back to our budget with our wants and our needs, what kind of things do you use to buy with credit? Now, we use an example sometimes of buying sneakers. Sneakers can cost about $100 or more. Now, is that something that's worth you using your credit to buy? Oftentimes with credit, if you don't pay back the full amount, that full $100, the bank is going to charge you interest. Remember that convenience fee of letting you borrow that money. If you don't pay back that money and you have to pay fees over and over again every month because you haven't paid off that debt, did you know that you can spend $200, almost $300 for that same pair of shoes just because you're paying interest and fees? So we want to think about it. Before we use credit, let's only use credit when we need something, perhaps something that we can pay back that debt very soon and have minimal fees, or something large where we don't have that much money in our pocket. So usually people will use their credit for things like purchasing a home, purchasing a car. But a lot of times that's when you get older and you have more money to work with. When you're starting off, you're going to have simple, lower amounts of credit. Everybody has credit. We need credit. But that little plastic credit card is not a free pass to use as much money as you want. We want to be sure that we're responsible with all of our money. We've worked so hard and we'll work hard to build our credit. So let's be sure that we're accountable and responsible for our financial decisions. Today, we've had the opportunity of introducing key terms in the language of money. Hopefully, you are starting to think about ways that you're going to increase your income. Hopefully, you've coming up with strategies on how to create a healthy budget. Let's get started savings and investing in yourself. Let's start building our credit right now. We want you to be healthy. We want you to thrive. And we here at Operation Hope want to remind you that economic empowerment starts with you. I'm Jessica Washington. Thank you for joining me.